Hey, this is Dag, and you're listening to Beyond Trek Podcast.
Red alert.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Beyond Trek Podcast. I'm Big J, along here with Renzo. We're going to be talking about the season finale of Star Trek Discovery, episode 13 of season 4, Coming Home. So the DMA is approaching Earth and Navarre. They are evacuating each planet. Shit's really hitting the fan, and Discovery is running out of time to open up communications and be able to talk to a species that is far different than anything that they have seen before. So, Renzo, why don't you say we jump right into this one, because I'm sure we have a lot we want to talk about.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Sure. So just a couple quick notes as we get started. So we've heard that the DMA is approaching Earth and Navarre. We've heard that many episodes now.
Yep.
A couple points of just like for reference. We know what solar system Vulcan/Navarre is in. It's in a system called 40 Eridani. It's only 17 light years from Earth. So it's, reasonably close.
Right.
But other notable ones that are very close is a system called Procyon, which is actually where Andoria is. So in all this that's going on, the Andorians must be shitting the bed too, because they don't have the Federation around them to help them out, and they're just freaking out. There's a bunch of others. Like, we can assume that the Tellarite homeworld is pretty nearby. We know the Orion homeworld is very nearby. We know that Alpha Centauri is right there, and that has a race as well. So there's a lot of races threatened by this just based on the proximity to Earth and Navarre. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Just putting it out there that, it's a very large effect, and if it's affecting both Earth and Navarre, it's got to affect these other bros too. So,
right.
Cool. All right. So starting off, the episode starts with this beautiful shot of Federation Starfleet HQ at warp.
I know. I was like, what the hell?
Loved it. It looked real cool. The swirling, how it's rotating as it's going, it looked almost like a pinwheel. I was a big fan of the effect.
Yeah.
Looked super cool. And then we get this discussion about like Tilly and her cadets, briefing them as to that they are no longer cadets. This is for real. We are in the shit now. And each deck can act as its own lifeboat, which is logical. It's a modular station, so the modules can work independently. Cool. Mm-hmm. And they are to report to certain duties, and she grabs two of them whom we've met before from the cadets episode, Garev and Haral, and they're going to go with her up to the bridge.
I'm glad we got to see Tilly again. It would have been a shame to finish out the season and not see her participating in this, and the cadets that she was working with also being able to play a part in this evacuation, because to me this is certainly an all hands on deck kind of thing with the whole fleet and everyone. So I wasn't expecting to see her. I was surprised. I try to stay away from the spoilers and whatnot, but good thumbs up there for the writers making sure to get her included.
Yeah, I liked it a lot too. It made sense too, right? If she's doing teaching and consulting and advising at Starfleet Academy, it only makes sense that she'd be involved in something that, takes place on Starfleet HQ, because that's where Starfleet Academy is at the moment. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it very consistent. I liked it. Her role in this episode is very good too, but we'll get to that as we go.
Yep.
So we see something that we haven't seen in Star Trek, I don't think ever. We haven't gotten a really good shot of the moon since like Enterprise, right? Which is before there were major cities on there. We know that there's, New Tycho, that there are cities on it, and there's a Lake Armstrong and such, but we haven't actually seen it. Here, as Starfleet HQ comes out of warp, we get a great look at the moon. It looks like it's wrapped in cities. It's got clear transportation lines. Love that. Good detail, good world building there, because it makes perfect sense.
And that's your screen background that you got right now. Okay, so for anyone listening, if you want to look at Renzo's background, see what he's talking about, that is a beautiful picture that the moon has been so developed by this point.
Yep, which, like I said, it fits with all the canon sources and the beta canon stuff, and it's just never been depicted, but now it has. So good on them. So in this scene, we hear reports to Admiral Vance, which it makes sense, he's going to be commanding this whole thing, Fleet Admiral Vance, that some of the decks on the starbase are already at capacity, so they just like undock and like warp out. Sold. Perfect. Makes sense. And we get this report that there are 17 ships that are leaving Navarre, Starfleet ships that are leaving Navarre, but he's being asked if they should redirect back to Earth. Vance, being ever the pragmatist, goes no, because Navarre only has 86 core capable ships, so they need every person they can get.
Yes. And this has to be, to go through an undertaking like this with not much notice, there's a lot to be put together there. And of course, they don't have the ships like they used to. They're still rebuilding. So, but anyway, even at full capacity, I don't think there's ever been a very realistic means of evacuating billions of people off of a planet.
Yeah. The closest things I can think of from beta canon would be things like putting people into transporter buffers for the whole trip, and you just essentially fill a ship with transporter buffers, essentially, right? So they don't take up space, they don't require air, food, water for the trip. You just fill a ship with as many patterns as you can. So pure computational power.
Yeah.
Probably real scary, but they've done it in Discovery just a few episodes ago when they were passing through something that was deadly. So, I mean, transporter buffering is probably not all that crazy anymore. But yeah, that's about the only thing you think of that would help make this possible, because moving roughly 10 billion people, which is the estimated population of like Earth at equilibrium, not so likely from spaceships. Not so easy.
No. I'm surprised that they even were able to get off as many as what was quoted here. When
450,000 is the number they were estimating.
They must have done that transporter buffering, because to me, they didn't have enough ships at all to be able to get that many. If they did, I'm surprised as hell, but it has to be some kind of, I would think they would have thought of this, and that was the means of doing it.
Well, think of it this way, right? The Enterprise D, which is still one of the biggest by volume ships we've ever seen from Starfleet, had an evacuation capacity of 15,000 total max, right?
Yep.
That's people nuts to butts in every single room kind of thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Really packed in like sardines.
Up in the hallways and everything. Yep.
Uncomfortably packed, 15,000. That would mean you'd need 30 Enterprise Ds doing this. And the time estimate for 15,000 was like 12 hours, right? So it's not a quick process. So yeah, this is a huge undertaking, very impressive. The other fun detail is that we hear from Tilly that the USS Mitchell will have picked up everybody on Titan. So one ship can clear out everybody on Titan, or it's the last ship at the very least, and it will still have room. So she directs it to come back to Earth to pick up a few more. Cool, makes sense. It's overall a very believable scene of panic, and it reminds me so much of the movie Titan AE's intro.
Yes.
Where Earth is under attack by the dredge, and they are like evacuating. You see rocket ships getting blown out of the sky by attacking fighters. Like, it's this whole panic moment, and everybody's just trying to get off. Same thing here.
Yeah, good reference there. That's right. Not a bad movie either.
Oh, I quite like it. I thought it was great. I think it has a lot of really interesting characters, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yep.
All right, so hop back. Oh, sorry. One last thing. At the end of this scene, we get this like Tilly silently to herself under her breath, kind of like saying, "Please hurry, Michael," right? Like showing that people on this station are very well aware that their only hope is what's going on extragalactically.
Yes.
It's not some sort of classified secret mission that they're on. Everybody knows because it's that important.
And that has to be really nerve-wracking to not know what's happening out there on Discovery. It's just, you're hoping and praying that they're even still alive. You don't know that. You don't know anything. So that's got to add some more suspense to it. And yeah, I like that out of Tilly, is the really trusting and wanting to trust that Captain Burnham will get it done, because there's a lot on the line, of course, like there always is.
So cut back to Discovery. We get this cool fly around scene where everybody on the bridge gets to like say something while they're all like kind of updating statuses to Burnham. They're all asking about like how to get out of the membrane, the hyperfield membrane that's got them trapped here. But they've got no solid plans. There's only weak signals. They're still asking to be released, but nothing's happening. And the response from the 10C is actually pretty interesting. You're already free, right? Like,
right. Why are you bugging us? Go.
Yeah, you're already free. You're already being rude to leave this way. So stop bugging us, essentially, right?
Right.
Which is very interesting. And
I didn't quite get that part at first.
We'll get. It makes sense when you get to the rest of the episode for sure.
Okay.
And we'll cover it. Don't worry. But yeah, at this point, we know that Awoshikan has detected Booker's ship, piloted by Tarka. It's off at high speed, gaining speed, trying to get to the DMA power source. Burnham immediately intuits what they're going to be using to destroy the thing. It's a gravimetric beam. So overall, this definitely seems like they understand exactly the stakes that they're in, which is important. And they just like press urgency, right? And at the end of this scene, Burnham tells Rillick to assemble all the diplomatic team inside of the mess hall. And this is where she's going to confront them about the assistance that someone whom we know is Ndoye gave to Tarka.
Right. And in a situation like this, if I were Michael, I would be pretty pissed because they were getting close to making some headway. And then it just takes one person to go off book and no pun intended.
Literally.
Right. To jeopardize billions of lives. And I think a good part of it was Tarka's manipulation. Just putting that pressure on Booker, who then puts that on Ndoye. So it's kind of a domino effect that happened there.
Oh, no doubt, right? Like it's definitely a transference of blame on this one, right? Ndoye can blame Booker and Booker can blame Tarka, but really we're all adults and responsible for our actions.
Yes.
So it should settle that Ndoye takes some fall for this, but we'll see how this goes in the episode. All right. Next scene is we see Booker ship speeding away, and it's got these smaller versions of the same stasis orb or whatever we want to call it that holds Discovery chasing after it. He is dodging. Tarka is demanding that Booker tell him how to change the shape of the ship. And Booker's like, fuck off. No, you should turn us around. Like 10 Seat was talking to them. So
the plan was working. And Booker believes the plan was working and that Tarka effed the whole thing up.
Yep. Tarka was arguing that once they stepped into that pod, they could all be dead. We don't even know. So it's this whole like conundrum of like, will he or won't he listen to somebody sane in the room? But it's Tarka, so we should just assume no.
Not at this point when you remember his motivations.
And then we get this Commander Reno giving this little talk about how like anger isn't productive, which she had given to Book last episode. And now Book is giving it to Tarka, hoping that he'll listen. But again, doesn't work.
Right. Because we knew that wasn't going to work.
No. As I've been saying this whole season, like since we got Tarka as a character, I don't trust him. He's manipulative. He is self-centered. He is egotistical. He is not something you can trust with or reason with, right? Like he is going to go after his own aims because he thinks he's just that much smarter than you and you're just dumb for not knowing better.
Right.
So anyways, we get to this fun bit at the end where Reno talks about the upside of their process right now. And then Booker inquires, what's the upside? Oh, we'll die fast. I hate pain, which I thought was delightful. It's a very nihilist take, so it was good. And then we get a small Deus Ex Machina for the episode, right? Like they find Grudge's collar.
I've got beef with that. I'm not even going to get into it.
I don't have beef with the technology or the usage of it.
Oh, no,
I just think it's just really fucking happenstance that they happen to find it right as they need it inside of the little cubby that was used for the brig.
It's right here. It wasn't packed with Grudge when she was taken in her cat carrier on the Discovery. A little too convenient. And
I can say I have many a collar for Tuvix, right? So maybe he has many a collar for Grudge, and this was just the last one that he tossed over.
Sure.
I don't know. It's just really lucky, right? It's just a little incredulous on that one.
Yeah. All right, I'll give it to him, but I ain't happy with it.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so back in Discovery, Burnham is now explaining to Rillick this whole, like, the plasma did not ignite itself. It didn't vent itself, right? The entire mission is compromised. We need to figure out what's going on. We cannot allow whoever was responsible to roam the ship. All perfectly valid and reasonable arguments. And then Ndoye just like comes up and goes, "It was me. I did it."
And that's very, very responsible. I was worried that this was going to be one of those. Not only do they have all this stuff going on, and now they have to throw in this find the person that did it type mystery clue, which the episode didn't have time for that. So, and that's big of her to step up and say, it was me. I was manipulated, but that's my responsibility.
Yeah, I agree. So Ndoye definitely has come off as being an honorable character, even if she's a bit naive throughout the season. So her forthrightness of being like, yes, it was me. I did it. Here's my why. And put me in chains, lock me up, whatever you need to, it's fine, is definitely a good sign for the character. It doesn't mean I think she should escape from any sort of like consequences for her actions, but it's still good. It makes sense. I also like the fact, like you said, that they subverted the whole, like, let's figure out who did it, right? I don't need another Star Trek 6, right? Like, I love Star Trek 6. It's my favorite movie.
We didn't have time for that. Yeah.
Right. We don't have time. The world is going to end here. So, but yeah. They do a really good job, though, of showing disappointment in Rillick and in Burnham's face towards Ndoye, right? Like the actress, Sheila Horsdal, who plays Rillick, really looked like she was like, why? Just fucking why now, right? Like it looked real disappointed. It was great.
I thought Ndoye was going to get slapped. By who? I don't know, but I had this feeling that hands were going to be thrown at some point in there, and it didn't happen, but it looked like that. And I'm not saying I would have been able to hold back from doing that, because, you know, you just signed the death warrant on billions of people. Smack.
All right. So at the end of the scene, they get a message from Saru. So they go and transport up to the captain's ready room, and Saru is explaining that they've received another message from 10C. They keep asking to be released, but 10C's responded that they already freed themselves. They already did. You are free. Right. And everybody seems to be like, are you sure we interpreted this message correctly? Zora has been spending some time learning this language, clearly, since last episode. It was like math and alphabet soup. Now they're like getting across proper messages. So good. That shows that this is developing. This makes sense. But they ask Zora to confirm the accuracy of the message, and she goes 96th percentile of sureness or surety on the translation.
Pretty damn good.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. Harai here speculates that it maybe 10C confuses them with Tarka and Booker. But here they start like really truly trying to understand why can't they discern us as apart from them. But yeah, so that's where that starts. And here's where we get our first attempt to communicate telepathically with 10C, which is like an about damn time. Tarina herself tries to mind meld with it through the glass, essentially, which we know is perfectly fine. We've seen several Vulcans do that in the past, so that's all fine. But it very quickly overwhelms her. She sees the orb glowing red on the outside. She says some visions, and then she gets a nosebleed and breaks it and slumps into the chair. Right, she gets carried off to sickbay very soon after. But it does show us that they at least considered the telepathy option. It just doesn't make sense to me that the only telepath that they're using for this is apparently Tarina, right? Like you don't have anybody else you wanted to do yourself.
She may have been the only one, because we know Vulcans are very adept at that kind of thing. So the question that I have is this something that, and I know it's part of the plot, it was just how the episodes played out, but I would have thought that maybe someone would have came up with this idea, especially Tarina, a little sooner. Like, hey, you know what? Why don't I just try mind melding with it? I don't know. A lot of times you kind of get into that tunnel vision of a task that you're doing and the way to do it. You forget that there might be other ways to do things or communicate. So
yeah, that's fair. That makes sense to me, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing that we know is we've seen Vulcans mind meld with super intelligent, super powerful organisms several times, right? Like Spock with V'ger, Spock with the red planet, Spock with several other things.
Spock, everything.
Yeah. So it makes sense, and we see that they get overwhelmed, and it's not good for them, and they can take actual neurological damage from doing so. But we've also seen that other telepathic races, like the Betazoid or whatever, have interacted with equally powerful things without sort of like the feedback, right? Like they don't get hurt by doing so. So maybe Betazoid's not a member of the Federation at this point, but surely they have something telepathic on the ship that's a little more, a little less invasive than the Vulcan mind meld.
That's a good point. We keep assuming that they should have brought a Betazoid along, but maybe they weren't. Maybe they're not a member of the Federation right now. No, but I think they would have. I think they still would have if asked sent someone. I can't. Well, but that's a whole other thing. Yeah.
I'm just surprised that it was just Tarana that was willing to try, because we know that she's got at least one other Vulcan aide, right? So I don't know. Maybe two people trying to mind meld would have worked out better. Spread out the overload or whatever amongst two bodies. I don't know. Whatever. Yeah. But yeah, it's good that they tried this. I just wish they would have tried it sooner.
Yes, me too.
Okay. So the results of this mind meld are that Tarana can tell them that 10C is confused and scared. They can't stop Booker's ship. They don't trust Discovery. So we need to find another way to reach 10C, or their worlds are doomed.
That's another minor thing that I think, okay, Booker's ship was really able to dodge and avoid the thingies from a highly advanced species. Again, plot, I'll let it go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It does seem kind of improbable, but maybe they just have never faced something like this. Maybe they're huge, right? Like 10C itself is exceedingly large creatures, right?
Yes.
So maybe they're used to only thinking of things their size as being a threat, whereas we're tiny little bugs. So
probably like us trying to hit a fly. No matter what you've got, it's hard as hell to get it.
Yeah, imagine trying to shoot down a fly with a machine gun, right? Might be fun to try. Good luck actually hitting it.
It would be fun as hell.
You probably don't need to actually hit it to kill it. The shockwaves of bullets flying past it's probably more than enough. But like, you still probably didn't hit it. So.
Right.
All right, so next scene is Tarana waking up in sickbay. We see Doctors Culber and Pollard, which was nice to see her again. Everybody's just monitoring Tarana. They talk about how her neural activity is settling back down, but blood pressure, heart rate also elevate. Whatever, normal medical stuff. She's settling down.
Yeah.
At this point, Tarana starts explaining something unusual about 10C. She was not linked to one of them, but to all of them, because they share a consciousness essentially. And Rillick asks, like the Borg, and Tarana goes, very different. So,
and that made me curious as to what the Borg were up to at that time, because I don't recall there's been any mentoring news about them. But again,
it may not even exist. It may literally be like she knows about it from history.
Right. Okay. Yeah,
we don't know. But yeah, it's interesting to speculate, but we just don't know. But it's interesting that they did mention the Borg hive mind specifically as a point of comparison. And then they say it's not like that. So they must retain some semblance of individuality, but they still can't separate from each other.
Right.
IDK, it's made up. I don't know. At the end of the scene, we get this nice touching bit with Tarana and Saru apologizing and talking to each other, talking about their avoiding of personal closeness. And, maybe we shouldn't do that because of his whole doing so dulls the brightness of his days, which I thought was very poetic and I liked it.
It was. If anything, Saru is a very... what was the name of the movie? It was based on an older movie. Steve Martin was in it. He had the long nose, and he was this guy in the firefighter was trying to woo. He's very intelligent.
I got nothing.
Woman. It's. I have to look it up. It's an older one, but it was kind of like that. Is Saru has that penchant for turning a phrase and using his intelligence to say something substantial besides WID, what's up? And
yeah, he's
like
certainly
that.
a bit more eloquent than your average
Yes.
message on dating apps. All right, let's just leave it at that. Okay, so we cut back to Tarka on Book ship. They are basically at the DMA power source. It would all be over in 15 minutes, he says to them.
Roxanne, I'm sorry, that was bothering me. Roxanne was the name of the movie. Okay.
Is this where the song comes from?
No, totally different.
Okay. All right. Cool. So anyways, 10C hasn't been able to stop them. They're now too close to the DMA power source, so the bubbles stopped coming. He tries to convince Booker to help him at this point by saying that Quajon would be there in the new universe. Come with me. Kaihim and Wito would be there. Reno counters this whole thing by saying it may look like them, it may sound like them, but it won't be them. They're dead. Accept it, right? Like, that's the process of healing.
It's not really them. And I think that's a concept that is hard to grasp because you're so used to that person, and they're going to be completely different people.
Not necessarily
with their own experiences. You don't think so?
Well, so let's just take the many worlds interpretation of like quantum physics, right?
Yep.
Every choice creates a parallel universe that is identical in every way except for the results of the choice that you made, right?
Right.
So infinite branching, every choice or not choice, everything creates a new one, right? If you were to hop from this reality to another reality for whom the only difference was when you shook salt on your pasta, you put too much versus what you did the real world, then everybody's still going to be basically the same. The only difference is going to be the pasta. In this case, the difference here has to be something along the lines of the DMA just didn't devour Quajon, it hit somewhere else. Well, that happened like a month ago. So before that point, they can't have changed that much, right? They must be the same person up to that point. So what is a month of disparity due to the difference? A month isn't going to change people all that dramatically. They'd be basically the same.
Well, and I get what you're saying there, but you're taking that concept of the branching, just changing a decision and multiplying it by there are billions of beings making those different choices. So are you saying that from the dawn of time that there have been nearly an infinite number of branches because each person making different decisions causes another branch? That's a lot. That's going to give me an existential crisis.
That's the many worlds interpretation, right? So every single choice from now until the beginning of the universe, right? Since the Big Bang, every single thing has created a new universe, a new timeline, essentially,
right,
where things are slightly different based on that choice, or hugely different depending on that choice, right? So the further back you go, the greater the amount of changes because they just compound on each other, right?
Right.
So if it's something that's reasonably recent, so a month ago, reasonably recent, and you can like isolate externalities and somehow Tarka can target this, right? Like find the one that has auros, find the one that is very close to ours, right?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that different other than the fact that you're going to go there and you're going to find a version of yourself that is already there.
True. And that's going to be awkward.
Right. Okay. So this whole scene ends with Tarka arguing that it's going to be over soon. And Booker goes, it sure as hell will. And he's continuing to tinker with the little collar, trying to figure out what he's doing with it. So cut to Stamets back on the ship. He's reporting to Burnham and Rillick that he can get them out. He knows how to do it. He's got a plan. It's a crazy plan. It should work. It should survive. It's the best he can do. Adira Tal explains that they need a large amount of energy to break the ship out of the orb. And they are much larger than Booker's ship, so they need a compoundingly larger amount of energy. The only thing that they can do it is the spore drive. And
that was
Deus Ex Machina number 2.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. So now the spore drive is going to do something that, and I'm going to ask this maybe a little later, is why the warp drive couldn't do it, but I guess they needed that more. But you're right. This kind of thing with the spore drive, and I like the effect of that. So once we get to where they actually do it, I want to say more about that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought that it was interesting that they chose the spore drive, but it is the thing that makes this ship unique. So it kind of makes sense from like a narrative perspective to make it about this ship. But yeah, I'm with you. It's an interesting idea. So the explanation for their plan is they activate the spore drive. It converts energy into momentum to propel them through the mycelial network. In this case, they're just going to remain stationary, and they're just going to release that same stored up energy into the orb and break the orb. Downside, burns out the spore drive, impossible to repair without space dock, and that journey would take them decades to get back home with conventional warp drive.
Oh, that's right, because they're decades, well, not that far from a galactic barrier. I didn't take, but once they go through that, yeah, they're decades away from getting back home.
That being said, I don't think it's going to be decades. Can mean 20 years, right?
Sure.
Just hypothetically, that's decades in the plural, right? So 20 years to get from outside of the galaxy all the way back to, say, Earth is still much faster than Voyager crossing half the galaxy to get back to Earth. So at least that does show us that their maximum warp speed has increased from what we saw back in Voyager, which is something we talked about 2 episodes ago, maybe. But yeah.
We did.
So yeah, so that's a good bit of explanation there. I'm sad it's still 20 years of travel, but extragalactic travel is fucking long.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so seeing no other options, Burnham gives him the go ahead, and he starts setting it up.
And this was the part that I like in the setup was the spinning of the ship when they are doing that to do.
Hasn't done yet. That's okay. We're at the cat door scene.
Oh, okay. I'm jumping ahead. My bad.
Yeah, it's fine. We always do. Anyway, so at this point, Tarka is focusing on his goal. He's programming something in the computer. Reno gets the explanation from Book about how Grudge hated holograms, and they had built in a disruptor into her collar so that it would disrupt holograms or a force field projected by holo emitters, which is what his ship uses. So he's able to use the disruptor to open a small cat door opening into the shield, as Reno puts it, and out they go.
I like the cat door reference.
Same. I thought it was very clever that they didn't just make the whole thing just like fizz out and go away. No, cat door, perfect. And a big cat door because Grudge is the big girl.
Yes, yeah.
Queen. Thyroid condition. She has a thyroid condition.
Yes.
All right, so now we cut to the scene where they actually execute the jump. They double check to make sure everything is good. They ask if Farai has any new messages to report. Nothing. So it's all just going normally. And then they do it. And the spore drive is holding while they're trying, but they have to put extra power to it. There are hull breaches on multiple decks. It's serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's a question I've got with this. When it's spinning, is that just kind of a metaphysical sort of thing, or are they actually spinning the ship itself?
I think from their perspective, the outside galaxy is spinning, but from the outside galaxy perspective, the ship is spinning.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a metaphor anymore. I don't think so. I was originally on it's just a metaphor for travel team, but I don't think so anymore.
It really, that's what I take from it. To me, it's as if it really is doing that. Like if you're sitting on the bridge looking at the view screen, that the Starfield turns, drops, or what you see what the ship does when it does the jump. And I think that, oh my God, that would be so. I would have had the view screens turned off and everything spinning like that. I know that would have, you got to hope to hell that the artificial gravity is working, inertial dampeners, which seem to go offline if you sneeze on it. So yeah, I thought that was cool that I think it really is spinning.
Yeah, I actually really like the effects for this shot too. They even had the reaction cube inside of engineering explode, which, that's a choice. Like that's an expensive choice from the filmmakers to blow up some practical thing on their set. So Cool. I do also want to bring up that it shows us more so that Starfleet really is very bad about fuse breakers everywhere. We see like gouts of flame shooting out of walls and like rock chunks exploding out of consoles.
What in the hell is up with the flame thing?
I can explain it. It's all fan theory, but it is silly.
Yes, it's very silly.
So here's the argument about it, right? So we know that Starfleet ships use what's called an EPS grid, right? Electroplasma, right? So electroplasma is something that hypothetically would be solid at room temperature. So if it ruptures, it cools rapidly, releases a lot of energy, and that's why you get flying rocks out of explosion bits. Cool, okay. And the flamethrowers are literally just the energy from the EPS grid releasing, because we know plasma is very fucking hot. So flames. It's a little on the silly side, guys. But I mean, I can make it make sense, but I shouldn't have to. It's a little much. Put in some fucking fuse breakers.
Because of course these exhaust vents for that are on the bridge.
Well, it's not intentional, right? They're taking damage, so.
But still,
you gotta have UPS conduits everywhere.
It's just funny as hell when you just see these flames coming out. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so the shockwave works. It releases them from the orb. They're out. Impulse engines are back online. Warp drive is going to be a bit. Weapons are out. But they are back to moving at the very least. Rillick finally gives this optimistic, like, this might be it. So they are ordered to catch up to bookship as quickly as they could. And unless we stop Tarka, Tensi's not going to talk to us, which is a reasonable assumption. So that I'm down with all their planning so far.
Well, they don't see them as different people. They don't know that this guy is gone rogue from everyone else. They just see.
They may not even understand the concept of going rogue.
True. Yes.
Yeah. All right, so at this point, we swap back to Booker's ship, where Booker has escaped from the force field.
Now.
It was quite a thing. He's used the hollow disruptor to breach the personal shield, and he knocks out Tarka. So one punch, chumps out, lights out. It was good. Here they start accessing the controls, and they find out that the ship is locked on autopilot. They can't override it. It would take them far longer than the time that they have to do so.
Another thing that Tarka put in that ends up biting them in the ass later.
It doesn't bite Tarka in the ass. It only bites Booker and Reno and the crew in the ass. He's very direct. Like he made sense with his choices of what to lock out and what to install. Yeah. He's just an asshole. So.
Yes.
Okay. Here we get another cool little moment where Booker takes off his pulls out his comm badge from his pocket, I believe, and gives it to Reno and tells her to return to Discovery and tell them what's going on. He tells Reno to tell Burnham to do whatever is necessary to finish this.
Yes.
We get Reno beaming back onto the bridge. Reno does not spend any time on the bridge other than to say the message that was relayed, right? Just passes that along. And after letting it sink in for a second, Burnham asks for options about beaming people off. No, there's a pattern interrupter. You can't beam off. So they have to try and figure things out. Nope, they can't use a tractor beam because the gravimetric beam would disrupt it. Weapons were still broke. What can we do? So here we get an interesting suggestion from Rillick, where she goes, Ndoye has like a singular tactical mind. We should like consider her input on this.
Right. Well, and so that's the thing is Ndoye may have done something bad. She thought it was a good idea at the time, but I'm glad that they see that she may have some input on this, and instead of just leaving her locked up in the brig, use every available resource that they've got for this, even when it means pulling her out and asking her for help.
Yeah, no, this is an existential matter, right? Like, this is a matter of survival. There is no plan B if this stuff doesn't work. Earth and Navarre are blown up. Cool. So using every resource at your disposal makes sense. That being said, her plan is hardly one that's all that like clever, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Right.
Okay, so cut back to Federation HQ. We see more planetary shields being impacted by the debris. We see some massive massive chunks actually make contact with them. I really liked the presentation of the shields. I thought that it looked good. It made sense from a developmental standpoint, considering that we've seen planetary shields in Picard and in other Star Trek shows. So all together looks good. They're still shooting down a bunch of rocks here and there. They've got shuttles everywhere. We see them carrying people up and down. My point of concern is this, though. Once you brought up the planetary shields, could you still beam people up?
So I was thinking about that, and that's interesting. Well, you know what? I'm going to say yes. I'll just say yes, because this is far enough in the future that with the technology advancements that they made, that now you can beam through shields. You know, I
I'm with you. No, it works for me. I mean, if it's a friendly shield, right? You know the mutation on it, like they tell you it.
Right.
It makes sense that you can beam through it. It just it was a good detail, though.
Yeah, it was. And so why doesn't Earth have a bunch of, or maybe they did and just didn't see it, but for once, I would like to have seen some actual substantial defense of Earth, orbital platforms or something. It seemed like all they had was a shield. That was it.
I mean, maybe we did. Maybe it was there. It just wasn't sufficient, right? Like we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of asteroids just flying at the planet and the moon too, right? So it's pretty, and the other Earth and or human things in the system too, right? So it's serious. There is a lot of rocks, and these were not small rocks. So something that I brought up with Dag a couple days ago, in this scene, we actually see. Actually, no, it's not in the scene. It's in the next time we see this, but we see a rock get through the shield. It breaks a hole, and we see it actually impact on land. We see like the explosion from it. That rock was way bigger than what wiped out the dinosaurs. The Chicxulub asteroid was only 10 kilometers. That thing looked like 200 or 300 kilometers.
Oh,
right?
Was it really that big?
Yeah, just based on the size of the shield hole that it makes, if you apply it across, the thing was massive. But yeah, these are not little rocks. So
apparently, it's yeah, you're right. It doesn't take a large rock to wipe out species on a planet, because it's that speed that is going when it hits. Sure, you've got to have some size to it, yes, but
I will say these rocks didn't seem to be moving all that fast. They were just big.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a function of both, right? You can either have speed and be small, or big and you can go slower, but either one can wipe you out. It's just that little bit goes to show us that like their defensive technology, this planetary shield, is very good.
Yes.
Okay. Other details here. We get some shots of the USS Mitchell, which is the ship that had been evacuating Titan that Tilly called back in, showing up and saving some folks. It actually intercepts asteroids that would have blown up additional evacuation shuttles. So overall, their plan seems to be working. They're holding off the rocks as best they can. Yeah, I mean,
best they can do in that situation. And was it just me, or was I really hoping what that ship that came in was the Voyager J or the Enterprise? The way it made its appearance kind of made you think that it was going to be a big deal, but it was the Mitchell. Like, okay. Yeah. It
was a ship that they just mentioned a couple minutes ago. Well, at this point, like a half hour ago in the episode. So yeah, I kind of was hoping that we'd get like a reference of like the Enterprise being involved in the evacuation or Voyager being involved in the evacuation. But for all we know, those two may have been at Vulcan or in Navarre doing the same thing.
True. Yeah.
I imagine that the situation over Navarre was no better than it was here.
Oh no.
So okay. Cut back to Discovery, and Deeya, goes over the obvious possibilities: tractor beam, weapons, etc., all that such ruled out. So she suggests using a shuttle on autopilot to ram Booker's ship. This is not the most clever idea. Kamikaze is not a new idea here. Why did nobody else think of this?
Well, I think that's another one of those. It's a very unconventional tactic. It's not within that top 5 of the list, and maybe it wouldn't have worked. Maybe that was the thought. It was, okay, well, there's no way that's going to work, and plus, who's going to be crazy enough to pull that off? But it all.
Well, when
comes
Ndoye
down-
suggested at first, she suggested doing it with autopilot. It's only after Nilsson corrects them and being like, no, navigational sensors are fucked. You'll have to do this with a person. That they get to that point of there. But yeah, so we get this really good scene, which definitely fooled me, where DeTmer volunteers to do it. DeTmer is like standing up and ready for the job. And I was like, oh, wow.
She's a goner.
She's done. And look at Owo. Owo knows she's a goner too. Oh shit. We're doing it. Nope, they didn't do it. They swerved on me. They swerved on me, and I was happy to see it because I love Deemer. But I was definitely thinking that it was legit. But then Ndoye ends up saying that she was a combat pilot. She's got experience doing it for years. And let me do this as penance for some of what I did, essentially.
Which was
that
good
was
of
cool.
her. It's good penance, and I'm glad that she stepped up without hesitation.
Agreed.
To do it.
I also like what she told Burnham, though, she gives her comm badge, her United Earth comm badge, to Burnham, and asks her to tell the president of Earth that she gave her all for Earth if she doesn't return.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Self-sacrifice is cool. That's awesome. You're still a bit of a traitor. Light treason here.
We're not going to forget that.
But it's good that she was willing to take that kind of risk.
Yeah.
All right. So next scene, we are now back on Federation HQ or Starfleet HQ. The bridge propulsion systems are offline at this point, so they are stuck in Earth orbit. We hear mentions of additional ships, the Pathfinder, the Tikov, which is the one that had been the Seed Vault ship that Nan had worked with. Mm-hmm. We hear about the USS Credence. That was the ship that had their antimatter their dilithium stolen by Jivini, the Nog, which we've seen before, and the Yelchin, named after Anton Yelchin. Uh-huh. So love that. Great name choices all around. All make a lot of sense. It's good to get names coming back too. So
yes, I like getting and I know there are a lot of ships, but I still do prefer that. I like hearing consistency in ships. Like, even though we might have 100 ships, I don't mind hearing the same 3 or 4 mentioned each time we're involved in some part of the plot.
Yeah, as long as it makes sense geographically, right? Like if they're always ships, if your story is always taking place around Earth, then it makes sense for it being the same kind of like batch of ships, right?
Right.
But if you're saying the same batch of ships is at Earth, but also on like Cardassia Prime, that's a bit more nonsensical. But in this case, makes perfect sense because Starfleet HQ came here, just presumably bringing ships with it and so forth and so on. So works for me. Anyways, at this point, he starts ordering all ships to pull out, depart for Earth. Here's where we see several asteroids actually impacting the surface. This is the one that I was talking about a minute ago, where we see one like breach the shield, and it's a big old blast. And then he tells everybody on Starfleet HQ to evacuate as well, to beam to one of the other ships, to the Mitchell, the ship that had just saved there about a minute ago. Tilly orders Gorev and Haral to go. She congratulates them. She said they did their best. It's kind of a good touching scene where they're like, we did everything we could, but I wish we could have done more. Yeah, absolutely. We always wish that. But yeah, so out they go. And then Tilly just kind of stays. And Vance is like, there's no way for you to leave now. She's like, I know.
That is something that's got to be said about the bravery of Starfleet officers and the expectation they may have of at some point you're going to knowingly be possibly sacrificing yourself to save others. And it always seems like they have no hesitation with it. Like there's no problem with it. I can't come up with any time that anyone has known that was the solution and not done it, or no, that was the sacrifice and didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, they're brave and they're strong, and this is part of what they train for and part of the code that they live. It's good. It's good that there isn't a hesitation.
Yes.
All right. So back on Booker's ship, he slaps Tarka, essentially shakes him a little bit, wakes his ass up, and tells him to like help us stop the gravimetric beam. Tarka refuses. He's almost home. Same nonsense that he wants to talk to Oros, and Oros is going to be there waiting for him, right? Booker finally manages to get through to him and was like, I understand the pain, the hole that we leave behind, blah, blah. It all makes sense. Tarka finally has some emotions that aren't just greed or whatever. So he has some feelings. He cries, but he says that even he can't undo the computer lockout in the time that they have left. So a fractal encryption code was used, which we've heard a few times before. It's what kept out the Borg Queen in First Contact.
Yep, First Contact.
So it's definitely got a lot of work to undo it. And that's when we hear about a proximity alert. Deeya shuttle impact collision course. Neither one is able to move or do anything to try and stop it. The ship impacts with the shuttle, or rather the shuttle impacts with the ship.
I love the maneuver. It was great. Prepare for ramming speed.
Yeah, it was great. It's not actually very typical that we actually see ramming in Star Trek, so it was good to see it.
You're right, we don't. The only other time I can think of is in Nemesis, when the Enterprise E rammed the Scimitar. So it's not common in Trek, but we get threats of it all the time. You know what? I thought of another one. Mm-hmm. So in the Chintaka battle in Deep Space Nine, the Dominion ship started ramming stuff, and they rammed the Odyssey. The Dominion were all about the rams. Yeah, I don't know why I excluded them. I guess I was thinking Starfleet ships.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, you're right. That was because for the Dominion, that's like a strategy of theirs.
Throw away soldiers.
Oh yeah. We'll just breed more of them.
Yeah. Okay. So the scene ends with the shuttle blowing up against the Booker ship. It's disabled. Woshikin is able to transport Deeya to Sickbay, directly to Sickbay, which is an interesting little detail. And Woshikin also detects that Booker and Tarka are alive, still on the ship, but she is unable to lock onto them. In about 90 seconds, Booker's ship is going to impact with a hyperfield and be instantly destroyed. Booker is trying to find a way to beam them back to Discovery, but there's not enough power. Tarka disables life support, so he beams Booker out. Booker is trying to argue them we should both go. Tarka goes, no, I'm going to stay. I'm going to use my device. When we impact the hyperfield, maybe the power there will be enough to send me home. Sure.
Sure. Whatever, buddy. It's gone to this point, and you got to let them go. You can't save everyone. And
I'm not even sure Tarka is worth saving, to be honest. Not. So it was a sweet moment where Booker still tries to be the good guy and bring him along, but there's no time, there's no energy. So Booker gets transported out, and then as the Booker ship, which has sometimes been called the Nautilus, impacts the hyperfield, Tarka is holding his little interdimensional transporter and activating and pushing buttons on it. So we are honestly left unknowing as to whether Tarka survived or not. I don't care at all, right? This is an open plot thread that I'm not going to tug on, which is rare for me. It doesn't make a difference whether he lived or died. No.
Well, we don't need to see him again.
Yeah.
So let's just say whatever to that, whether he survived, died. I'm done with the guy at this point, honestly.
Yep. And then we get Woshikin reporting that Booker's transporter signature is beaming straight to the bridge. We see it loading in. We see it appearing, and then it phases out and fizzes out and is gone. And Booker is dead, or so we think at the time.
Right.
Right.
Didn't make it. He's dead, Jim.
I believed it. I was sold by it. I was like, okay, cool. Consequences in this show. Nice. I like it. Burnham looks like she is broken real fast. Great acting. Incredible. Sonequa Martin Green deserves so many awards for her portrayal of Michael in this show.
And it's great. Here's what I really liked about that. There are some very, I think, there are times where there's such little to no emotion showed with any loss or problems, whatever it may be, loss of life. I think that there's been too much composure that's been shown in Star Trek. I'm glad that we finally got to see that this person, Michael, had an emotional connection to Booker, and when it looks like he's died, there doesn't have to be composure to be kept there. The only other time that I can think of right off the top of my head of that was in Star Trek 3, Search for Spock, when Kirk's son was killed, and Kirk kind of backing up in shock and falls right in front of the command chair. So I don't think that there's an issue or problem with with showing actual emotional reaction, even from the captain of the ship that way. To me, didn't feel like it was out of place or unnecessary.
I agree on all parts. I would say, though, that we do sometimes see emotional responses that are anger from captains when there's loss.
Yes.
I'm happy that we saw something other than anger. Anger is sometimes healthy, but not always. And especially in this case, it would not have been helpful to be angry that the hyperfield supported by 10C destroyed the ship that her love was on. So better to be sad than angry, right? And that's an approach that makes sense in this case. Anyways, so she snaps out of this like momentary, because truly she was only in this state for like a few seconds. She snaps out of it because Reese is reporting that there's another orb coming to grab them. And she composes herself rapidly and orders her to prepare to re-enter the orb. And we're going to finish what we started. Mm-hmm. Very impressive that the character can like recompose herself that fast. Sequel Martin Green again knocks it out the park with the acting on the role, so all that's solid from my perspective.
Yeah.
All right, so back to Federation HQ. Another internal explosion. They report that their weapons are finally disabled, but the ships have made it all away safely. Something that Vance decides that he wants to celebrate. He hands Tilly a flask of Ryzen whiskey, a gift from Tarka when Archer Space Dock was completed.
Does he just walk around with that?
It's his office is right there.
The flask of whiskey.
His office is right there. His ready room.
So he had a stash.
Doesn't everyone? So Tilly reports that she managed to reprogram all the .23s that the fleet had brought with them, and presumably left in orbit because they were doing repairs on the exterior. So when the ships walked away, the bots get left behind. Cool. She repurposed all of them to boost power to the shields, so Earth has a little bit more time. Tilly estimates roughly 2 hours. So she managed to boost the shield so that they would repel rocks more, so you won't get more of those like multi-megaton or maybe gigaton impacts like that previous rock that we talked about.
Right.
So
yeah. This was a very, did everything we could. Now it's time to just sit back and watch it. We have to watch it happen now.
So for me, watching this scene after having just seen Booker die like a minute before, I was like, oh shit, are they going to kill Tilly and Vance?
Tilly and Vance are going to bite the dust.
I was seriously like, they're doing it. They brought back Tilly just to kill her. Wow, brave. The internet's going to be mad, was my thought.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I thought the same thing. There were so many head fakes. I thought there were several characters. I thought this is it for them. They're DeTmer for a moment there, Booker, Tilly, Vance,
and Doye.
Right, and Doye. Yeah. So this show was not afraid to show that people's lives are put on the line. They may not make it for another episode. I'm
going to reserve my judgment on that till the end, but I have words about that for sure.
Okay. Oh, I can't wait for that. Yes.
Yeah. So they go back and forth. They just talk a little bit about how important it is to connect with family and with relatives. All good, heartwarming stuff. The kind of stuff that you are going to let out right as you are facing your own demise. So makes sense. Back in the hyperfield, the orbiting Discovery is pulled back into the gas giant. Awoshkan detects a structure unlike anything they've ever seen before. It's a lot like the one that they had found on the dead world with 10 sea bodies. There are thousands of life signs there, and now there's a new message from 10C. We now understand your request to leave the orb. You are not one. How many are you?
And they're finally getting the concept that these smaller beings are not just one big conglomerate. Now they're starting to understand that there's an individuality there, which wouldn't they have known that? I mean, they seem to be individual creatures to me. Well, and Tarana she said not like the Borg, but it seemed like there was still a collective-like setup with 10C. At least that's what I took from it.
It's hard to say, right? Like, we don't know enough about them to really guess. It's, I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that they perceive things collectively. So if I look at something and you look at something, we're going to see things differently, right? But if two of the 10C look at something from different angles, they share those perceptions so they can come to a more the same conclusions because they're sharing all the same information, right?
Right.
So maybe just the way that they interact with the universe is changed by that aspect. So, there's no discordant thoughts in the great sea of whatever their thoughts are because everybody sees the same things.
Right.
I don't know. They haven't advanced a lot. Maybe they just haven't had much exposure, right? Like they may not have met many races at all, if any at all. They might have been almost along the lines of we're the only intelligent life because of where they are.
Right. Yeah. And that's very well could be because they are in just that extragalactic space. They're in between galaxies, closer to the Milky Way galaxy, because
Quite
even
close.
at maximum warp, it didn't take long for Discovery to get to them. So, well, but then wouldn't that contradict what we've thought all the way up to this point? That okay, nope. Let me rephrase that. Okay, so right now, it still holds true that we didn't believe there was any reason for the 10C to think that there was any intelligent life in this galaxy, this pond that they were fishing in.
Well, they even said as much, right?
Yeah.
We didn't know that you were higher life forms.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's probably more likely that they have encountered very few other species because they are outside of the galactic barrier. They may not have ever traversed going in. It is very rare for things to traverse going out, and there isn't a lot there. They are in a dwarf galaxy or some shit that's very close to the Milky Way, but they aren't in the Milky Way itself. So it makes sense that they're going to be pretty isolated. And they now been hiding inside of this hyperfield for who knows how long. So at the very least, they're also isolationists too.
Yes.
So I don't know. I kind of can follow the logic that they didn't really understand the concept of the self, the individual self, very well. So, all right. So they report to the shuttle bay, all our characters, literally everyone, and they're going to hop into the shuttle transport, this egg-shaped shuttle, and it's going to take them over to the structure built by 10C. Everybody's working together. Stamets is beaming in hydrocarbons onto the orb's surface. Zora is going to project the light field. Deeya is transmitting a new language algorithm to Saru. Saru is typing and dictating what's being read, said by both parties. Everybody's there. All our bridge crew, the diplomats and Doye, everyone that we can think of is along for the ride.
Well, they've got to throw everything into it now because they have to know that they're basically out of time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not complaining about it. I just think it's a really neat setup for it, right? Like they took everyone. So they go through the discussion. They explain that they want for their children just as they do for theirs. Rillick is giving these opening statements. It is very impactful. This whole scene, I've heard criticisms of it saying that the dialogue is unrealistic. And while I don't disagree it's unrealistic, it is aspirational. It's how we would want to sound when we're communicating in such a situation, which is very Star Trek to me. Picard's speeches don't sound very realistic for somebody just coming off the cuff, giving these massive speeches. These sound better than that. And so did Picard's. So I'm down with it.
I'm surprised that there was issue with the speech. I didn't, for being off the cuff in a situation like this, I thought was good. I mean, not something I would have had an issue with, but it's the internet.
Well, it's the other way around.
Complaints about everything.
No, Big J, it's the other way around. They're saying that for being off the cuff, the speeches were too good.
Okay.
Yeah, which fine, but we see Picard do the same thing all the time. They're aspirational speeches. This is what you would want to sound like during such a situation.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm down with it. I don't care. The speeches were, that being said, really damn good. Rillick is such a good character. She definitely makes the point, sells the point home. Saru just being the typist and dictating what's being said back to them is a little on the funny side. He is a very fast typist, apparently. So it was cool.
Doesn't surprise me that he's a really good, accomplished typist. I wonder what his words per minute are.
Yeah. So they end up tweeting to stop the 10C. They give these stories about why they have to, and they end with it with "Do not let history repeat." And at that point, 10C responds that they will do so, and then we cut back to Tilly and Vance that the DMA has stopped, and the DMA has ceased what it was doing, and the debris is going to pull away from Earth.
So help me understand this one.
Sure.
Because if the debris was already being propelled in motion
By gravity.
forward, right, by gravity, how is it that suddenly it all recedes back when the DMA is gone? Because wouldn't
The DMA
Earth's
is not
gravity
gone. The DMA was not described to be gone. They described it as stopped.
turned it off? Okay, well, even if they turned it off,
Not even turned off. They said that it stopped, right?
stopped. Okay.
So here's my thought process for it, right?
Uh-huh.
The DMA is pushing things away while it's trying to find the boronite ore. If
Yep.
it stops pushing, gravity starts pulling. So it just changes their course again.
Even with material
Momentum?
and asteroids that are that close to Earth, like in Earth's gravity. I mean, that was just the thing that kind of I didn't quite understand, was that when it was turned off, suddenly all this stuff kind of went back in reverse to where it was. I had a hard time with that. It's not a big deal, but I was having a hard time with that.
Yeah. I thought it was a really well shot scene too, like
Yes.
showing people's reactions and faces as this news is coming through. Good job on the cinematography aspect to it. I liked it. But yeah, what we get now is people being relieved. Reno even jokes to Stamets, calls him Bobcat, that she has a cocktail in the works for him. Bobcat is a funny nickname for Stamets, so I can't wait to hear more about that.
Yeah, I want to know where that came from.
Yeah, and then the 10C do something a little strange. They're able to determine Burnham's sadness.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they have lots of technology, but they don't have much experience with dealing with humans. But they're able to either read her emotions, either from her face, her mind, or her smell, right? Something in her hydrocarbons, right? But they're able to determine that she is sad, and they ask to explain, and she explains about this whole that her one died in this whole mess. She didn't say which one was her one, so it was very possible that they could have interpreted it as being Tarka.
Right.
Right. But instead they understand that it's Booker, and then they emit a flash of light, and then Booker reappears. They say that they didn't know what it was that they had captured, but they knew that based on its timing, it was important. That's paraphrased, but pretty close. So they just restore the transporter signal that they had intercepted.
Now, I'm not a pro when it comes to the science of pheromones. I know that pheromones play a big role in different parts of the insect and animal kingdom, of course. So for me, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that 10C, that's how they communicate. They're very adept at that, and that Michael was emitting pheromone that they match up with sadness.
Yeah. I'm down. It's very interesting that they managed to get to the point from you're a what now to let's read your emotions based on your biochemical like output, right? Like that's quick, especially because this is the first time that they've met her in person. So
you smell upset.
Right.
You smell sad.
Try that to your girlfriend sometime.
I'm going to do that.
But yeah, so it was cool.
You smell angry.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I like the fact that she's able to talk them through her sadness and her loss, and then they managed to bring back Book, which is something I think is bad. But anyways, then we get the last bit of dialoguing, and this is probably the most unrealistic bit of the lot, but Booker's monologuing and guilt tripping of the 10C, where turning off the DMA is not good enough. You can't just put it places where nobody lives. You have to join the rest of the galaxy. All right. Talks about the world route on Quajan. Cool. Got it. Being interconnected is important. This is the lesson of the season, obviously. That communications interconnectedness is important. So, yeah, I mean, it's great, but he really roasted them.
I thought it was a little extra.
I did love the scene where his Quajan empathy would lit up, and then all of them mimicked the same pattern with their light emitting organ. Love that. Yeah. That got me verklempt, right? I was choking up a little bit. That was really touching. But yeah, it was a bit rough. Otherwise, it just seemed why are you pushing this? You literally just got them to turn it off. Chill, bro. Bring this up tomorrow.
Yeah, this is not the time or place right now. It's kind of like when last season when Vance was in negotiations with what was her name? The Orion Osira. They're working out a peace. Everything's looking good, and then Vance comes in with, well, but you must stand trial for your crimes and this and that. It's
oh no, very disagree with you. I think that was the right time.
Okay. Well,
I argued this then, and I'll argue it now if you want me to, but I think that was the right time to bring it up.
I remember you saying that, and I was kind of more on the slow down, bro. You just got this. Now you're going to sour it. It's kind of how I felt with Booker and this whole thing. You're right, dude. They turned it off. Leave it alone. Let's approach that later.
Yeah. Anyways, the 10C's response is, very mature. It's, we have caused great harm. We are filled with regret and sorrow. We will make this right. Kind of hard to make some things right. We don't know how far advanced their technology is, but I don't think that it's within their power to undo the destruction of Quajan and other planets that got blowed up. So, but we'll see.
I think that there could have. I'll hold this for the end. I'll hold it for the end.
Yeah. All right. So back in Earth orbit, Tilly and Vance drain their drinks. They finish them off. They are celebrating, and they survived. Surprise. Back on Discovery, they cancel their red alert. The hyperfield itself dissipates, and then they create a wormhole and send Discovery back home.
That was awfully nice.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting to see that they have the ability to create wormholes too, though, because that's also super advanced. That's very cool.
To be so advanced that you can just create wormholes like that, holy shit. That's pretty advanced.
Yep. Okay, so now we start entering the denouement of the season. Discovery arrives back in Earth orbit. The crew start to mingle. Everybody's chit-chatting. Everybody's having a bit of fun. Titan took some serious damage, as in the moon. But Earth was not severely damaged. Navarre was not severely damaged. Earth is sending aid to Titan, as part of one unitary polity. So all that seems good. Now, I do want to bring up the fact that we saw that massive asteroid hit Earth's surface, and they're saying that it was not severely damaged. That's fantastic. I love the fact that they've advanced technologically enough that they can be like, we'll fix this. This is fine. 300-kilometer asteroid. Fuck it. We can fix this. This is well within our terraforming tech. We're good. Don't worry. I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
It makes sense. If you're 32nd century and you've terraformed thousands of worlds by this point, you should be able to fix a single asteroid impact. You can, block the typhoon of tsunami, the tsunami that's going to be coming out from the impact site, quarantine the harmful gases that are coming out of it, and, vent it up into space if you need to, whatever. But they can deal with it. Good. I'm happy. I would be more annoyed if they couldn't deal with that impact.
You're right. I can see being annoyed with it, but I also think that that's another lean on. We're in the 32nd century. You have to assume that they have the ability to do this, and it's kind of like just there's always this free pass that you get because of the assumed advancement in technology.
You're right. I mean, I'm definitely assuming that it's that, right? But I am happy to make that assumption because it makes sense in the universe. There's verisimilitude there with what's going on, right? Granted, like I said, a big asteroid impact is serious, for sure. But they have managed to advance to the point where they can remediate it without it being that big a deal. I have no doubts that people died because of that impact. For sure. It's just too big. Something was under there. But it's good that it wasn't like a civilization ending impact from just that one rock.
Correct. Yeah.
So, all right. So we get some comments about how Tilly is proud of Deeya for becoming more sociable. She says that they are now able to adjust with crew better, which is a good development. We see Saru and Tarana looking out over Earth, thinking about Navarre. Again, confirming that they are now close. We even see a hand holding at the end of the scene, which I thought was really nice.
It was. I liked it. I like some good hand holding.
One other thing. There was also a good bit of Vance talking to Rillick about how they had both been exactly where they needed to be, which is correct, right? Like they both did exemplary jobs during this whole storyline. I thought it was really good, that scene. So then we cut to Burnham's ready room where Rillick is showing up. They talk a little bit about 10C. They talk about the president's family, that her partner was evacuated from the Luna research team. The rest remained on Earth, but no serious damage to them. They skipped the worst. Rillick commends Burnham about how much she has grown since their first time meeting and how she would be ready for the captaincy of the Voyager, but she doesn't want it. She's never wanted it. So
I am glad that she didn't take it because
there's no way.
No. Discovery is her home. And
who else is going to understand her time travel path of nightmare?
Yes, exactly. I just don't want to see any more back and forth or thing between Michael and Saru on who's going to be the captain of the ship.
Hey, this is the only time we're going to see somebody remain captain of Discovery for more than one season.
Oh, yeah.
We had Lorca, then we had Pike, then we had Saru, now we've had Burnham, and maybe next season we'll have Burnham too.
Yeah, I hope so. Good God.
And then we end up on one of the things that I had actual problems with in this whole episode. So they come to Booker's fate. Burnham makes it very clear she is not asking for leniency, but she wants to know what's going to happen to Booker. And Rillick goes, he violated multiple Federation statutes. He wants an isolitic weapon, etc., etc., etc. He deserves to spend some time, but she points out that reasons do matter. So you can only find justice when you understand something's reasons. Cool.
Right.
That's all fair. So I can totally understand that there's a logic behind not sentencing him to life in prison or something, right? I get it. And having him do some sort of like restitution where he's working to assist the victims of the DMA in the Navarre system or in the like Sol system, again, makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah, and we've seen that even since the TNG and Voyager time, that by the 24th century, incarceration, at least on Earth, incarceration isn't handled the way like it is now, where you're thrown into a for-profit prison in a jail cell for decades because you got caught with an ounce of marijuana or something. In the future, it's
rehabilitative.
It's rehabilitation. It's not incarceration. It's rehabilitation. And I think that that's very, very fair, very just. And it's like, hey, yeah, we're going to put you to work.
Absolutely. I agree on every part, right? But there needs to be consequences, and something like, here's your 6 weeks of community service or something is a little embarrassing for something like this, right? So
you think it should have been more?
I don't know how long they're giving him. They didn't say a specific number, but it should be a matter of like years or a decade of time spent doing this, right? Like he needs to rededicate his life to undoing the damage that he did. And they have not made it clear that that's what this is for him. And in this next scene is where we discuss this a bit more. So Grudge is in her carry case. Booker is explaining to Michael that what his future is going to be about. So the Starfleet security guard is asked to leave. They talk for a few minutes. They embrace. They'll miss the freedom of each other's time. We hear a cool Kwajani phrase, Kwakani Yakwan, which is really cool, actually. We've parted 100 times, maybe we rejoin to part 100 more.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Again, poetic. A lot of that in this episode. But yeah, it was good. They talk about their history a little bit more. And then before even being able to actually say their goodbyes, he's transported away after handing her the coat that he was wearing.
Very touching goodbye. I'll leave you my Letterman jacket. You can
very accelerated goodbye.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then we cut to our final bit of scene. So we hear like a bit of a voiceover from Burnham talking about how the crew is all on shore leave. Adira is working with Linus. DeTmer and Awoshkin are keeping tabs on 10C's cleanup of the effects. Nilsson, Reese, and Christopher are meeting with Bryce, assuming that Kovich lets him, which we still don't know many details about. Stamets and Culber are going to Puerto Rico so that they can actually have original Mavi, which, as someone who's had it, it's okay.
Not that special.
It's got a very rooty quality to it, like very herbal. So think of it as being like a non-alcoholic version of like Jägermeister, but it is earthier. So
wow, okay,
it's not bad. It's just I'm from Miami, so I grew up with this stuff. It was everywhere. Plenty of Puerto Ricans there. So I guess I just never really fell in love with it. I had it mostly in canned soda form.
Oh, really? Well, you mentioned Jägermeister, and that is the devil piss in a bottle, and that's what Jägermeister is. That shit's evil. I do like not Jaeger. Miss that.
Okay, what's that? I like Jaeger. I think it's pretty good. Whatever. I don't like licorice, but Jaeger is acceptable.
I know. Yeah.
All right, so then we get to a nice, another touching, quick scene with Saru and Tarina offering a bloom from one of his plants. Booker and Grudge in tow are now in a Federation emergency center on Europa, which is a moon of Jupiter, which is not something that we'd heard of being a Federation colony before. So cool, that's a thing. And here we get this lovely little explanation about the Federation continuing to reconnect. Navarre has rejoined. Tellar Prime never left because the Tellarites are too stubborn to leave anything ever. Love that.
The stubbornness paying off.
Yep. And Doria is in the talks to rejoin, and Earth is whom they're meeting with in this next scene.
Just get to the scene. It's awesome.
In a minute.
Okay.
So they're all standing there, and there's like a shuttle that lands, and the president of Earth herself steps out, being played by the incomparable Stacey Abrams, which was... Yes. I made unmanly noises. I freaked out. I was like, ah! It was great. I really liked that a lot.
I did not see that coming whatsoever.
Very unexpected cameo from somebody whom I respect a lot.
Yes.
And she is the hugest of Trekkies. So really cool to see her get some love.
Yeah. Well, and she was pretty much a hero for democracy in this last election. They're saying that she single-handedly saved democracy, which, yeah, I believe. Wasn't there talk about her getting the Nobel Peace Prize? I remember that just kind of being in the ether that was talked about, but she definitely deserves that. And I was really happy to see Stacey Abrams in this episode. They could not have picked a better person to portray the president of United Earth. That was brilliant. That was perfect right there.
Yep. I mean, so they get some cool little dialogue between like Ndoye and the president, whom we never get a name for, but according to the production people, it's literally President Abrams.
Yeah,
it's behind the scenes stuff, so it's not really canon per se, but that was what it was named in the script, kind of thing. Okay. So discussion between Ndoye about the close call, make it your last close call, please, personal favor, thanks, kind of thing. And then she has a moment of discussion with Burnham about, the discussion to rejoin the Federation. And then she's like, no, there's nothing to discuss. We are ready to join now.
Yep. I'm glad.
Love it.
as a founding member of the Federation, I'm glad that Earth is finally coming back in, and they're not making a lot of red tape or bullshit about it.
They are getting the band back together.
Yes, the band back together. Yeah, Tellar never left. Andor, Navarre, Earth. Yeah, it is getting the core members back together.
Yeah, it's a really good like forward-thinking statement for the rest of the show. We know that there's a 5th season on the way, so this is like the setup for the rebirth of the United Federation of Planets, right? Maybe you call it the second United Federation of Planets or the new United Federation. Don't care. It's still the UFP, and I'm happy. A couple additional comments about what's happened as a result of Stacey Abrams being in this episode. It's caused a little bit of drama on the internet.
Yeah,
some conservative folks are mad, saying that why is politics in my Star Trek? Why is Star Trek so woke and so liberal? And to which I send them back to our John Billingsley interview, where Star Trek has always been woke. Star Trek has always been progressive. Yes. And Stacey Abrams is as big a fan as it gets. I have seen her crush people at Star Trek trivia. It's impressive. She's real smart about this stuff. So seeing someone like her wanting to take part in the franchise, and she has a platform and she does good in this world, I think it's great.
You know who I would love to get on this show? Stacey Abrams.
Well, of course.
That would be spectacular. And you're right. It was such a shame, but very much expected of the internet to have some complaint about something. And you have the what if-isms happening. What if that part were played by Mitch McConnell or this other?
You know who really wanted that?
Something else. Who?
You know who is a Trekkie who really would love to do that kind of thing?
Who's that?
Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. He's a Trekkie. I don't know if he's on the same league as Stacey Abrams, but he was pissed that they chose her and not him.
Oh, that's too bad.
Poor guy. Maybe a flight to Cancun will make you feel better.
Wait a minute, Renzo, what was that last part you said? I couldn't hear you over the sound of my heart breaking.
Maybe a flight to Cancun will make him feel better.
Yeah, really.
It was pretty great. So with the show, the season ends with a shot of Federation or Starfleet HQ in a position over Earth with a massive fleet of both ships and shuttles, and it zooms out and we get a view of Earth that I don't think we've ever gotten on Star Trek before, because Star Trek loves to zoom out from Earth all the time, but we usually see North America, the eastern seaboard, the western seaboard, sometimes Europe, and I can think of one occasion where we saw like the northern Pacific, so you could see like Alaska all the way to Japan, right?
Very rare, but yeah, it's usually always centered around North America.
This time we zoom out and we see Africa.
Yes.
Right? Which is a lovely bit of messaging that there's more to this planet than just North America and Europe. Love it. Cool. On the even cooler side, you actually see city lights, because part of it is still covered in shadow. Part of Africa is covered in shadow in this part. So you see developed cities that are as big as the eastern seaboard megalopolis or bigger. They are huge looking cities, which again shows you that like Star Trek's future, 32nd century, is utopian, right? Like Africa is as developed as Europe, which should happen far sooner than the 32nd century, mind you, but it's showing you that that's happened. It's not like there's any sort of vague wonder of like, maybe parts of Africa are still undeveloped in the 24th or 32nd century. No, that's nonsense. It hasn't happened that way.
Right. Yeah. Maybe there's still warlords capturing supplies and food. No, we have to assume that all of that is gone. Well, because that was said in Star Trek First Contact, was that things like
war,
hunger,
poverty, famine,
war,
disease,
were eliminated.
Yep. So yeah, I think that that's a really cool way to end it. I'm sure that pissed off some other white nationalists and some other racists too.
Absolutely.
Why is your woke politics in my Star Trek? But who cares? So
when the only thing you know about Star Trek is the speech from the episode The Drumhead with the firstling, but it was twisted around as an excuse to be able to do and say whatever you want with no consequence. That's not what that speech meant, but apparently that's all you know about it, and jump in and complain about Star Trek when a person of minority is placed as a character that has importance. And yeah, the tiers out there on the conservatives on the right are just, I'm afraid we might have just lost the two conservatives that listen to or watch our podcast. Sorry, but hey,
Wait, don't go. Stay. Debate me. This is more fun when you argue with me.
So anyway, I started blasting.
All right, so I'm choosing violence. Okay. So let's end our review. I just want to give some closing thoughts here. So I liked the episode overall. I like happy endings. I'm a sucker for conclusions that close out plot threads and make things make sense.
Yes.
Sucker for it. Very happy. I don't like the fact that there were very few consequences for what happened, right? Like, so Tarka may or may not have died. I don't care, but he is out of the way. Booker's fine. DeTmer's fine. Ndoye's fine. Discovery's fine. Vance is fine. Tilly's fine. Everybody's fine. There were no consequences to this whole shenanigans, right? Earth is fine and Navarre are both basically undamaged. Titan took some, but whatever, right?
Right.
The only people who seem to have suffered from this whole storyline are Quay, Jean, Booker, and like that one penal asteroid that we saw, and maybe a couple other small ones that got evacuated, right? But like the stakes on this were set so high for there to be no consequences for anybody seems a little unjust, and they definitely did this as a game on purpose. Like they played this whole DeTmer's gonna die, Vance and Tilly are gonna die, Book's gonna die.
Yes.
They just kept doing it, and then none of them actually do. It just is a little manipulative of your audience to play with their emotions that way. And I get it. It made me stay glued to my fucking TV or laptop screen. But it's a little disconcerting that that's the way that they approached that. But other than that, I loved the episode, and I thought that the choice to bring in a cameo by somebody as prominent as Stacey Abrams is inspired. And I think that she did a knockout job of the actual role. And I have a fun tidbit for you, Big J.
Okay. Let's hear it.
So when they called, and this is in a Variety article that I read about this. So when they called Stacey Abrams to talk about this part, they did a Zoom meeting with her, and they told her that they wanted her to come on for a scene in one of the late episodes of the show. And she's like, well, tell me about it, but don't spoil anything. If you spoil anything, I am out. She is that serious of a Trek fan that she doesn't want spoilers, even though she's going to be in an episode.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is great.
So yeah, overall, I know that she had a fun time on set and that she bonded with Sonequa Martin Green and with the rest of the cast, and like they treated her like one of the family. She was there for 3 days that it took to film all of her scenes and such. So awesome that she snuck out and did it.
And she has some acting chops on her.
Yeah, she had done some acting in college and such. She'd been in like theater troops and such. So.
Oh, okay. All right. So in regards to my closing thoughts, I get what you're saying about the lack of consequence, the kind of thing, but I can see that the writers were more in favor of there's been enough crisis this entire season. Maybe we don't spend a whole lot of time talking about consequence of actions. I can kind of go either way on that. I might wake up thinking something differently. Who knows? I just sort of took it as it was. The other thing is I don't know. I think I'm kind of done with Booker, with Cleveland Booker.
I'm with you there. That's why I said I would have been okay with him dying, because I don't think he's good for Michael. Like at a social and or a personal level, like she can do better kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he deserves to be in prison for quite some time, or like rehabilitation for quite some time. So he should be out of the picture anyways. So I don't know why they decided to save him in this fashion. It just felt kind of, I don't know, kind of stilted. Whatever.
It could be one of those just in case things. Just in case we want to have him incorporated. Now, I would not mind a cameo or something, but I think that we've played out his entire character arc, and like you said, he should now be on that path of here's your rehabilitation. The last thing I want to see is him back on his ship, being a captain. Well, the ship was destroyed. I think I'm done. I think it's good. It was great. Played his part. The other thing, and this is more. I
am sad to see Grudge go, though.
Yeah, I liked Grudge. Yeah, Yeah, that was a shame. He took his cat with him for rehabilitation. Like, that cat didn't have anything to do with none of that mess. Why are you taking me? But I kind of had the whole thing about the 10C mining the boronite. Okay, so they're mining boronite in the galaxy. Didn't know there was any intelligent species. They're just doing their thing. So this entire season was spent on the mystery behind the DMA, what it was doing and why. Then when we get to the payoff, it was kind of a blink and you miss it sort of thing that, oh, we were doing that because we needed the boronite to power our
Hyperfield.
The field. Yeah, the hyperfield. It's like, okay, why would you spend this entire season behind this thing and only give it a passing explanation? And I don't even, if I recall from watching the episode, that it wasn't even direct. It wasn't even put in the same sentence that they were mining for boronite because they needed the boronite to power their hyperfield. It just, they took the whole thing and it felt like a throwaway line. That should not have been a throwaway line. And maybe I'm too left brain for it. I was just expecting more of an explanation for it. I feel like that we got the, I don't know. I don't know what explanation I was expecting. I don't know what would make me happy, but they did the same thing last season. Well, but then they at least gave what I thought was a good explanation for what they did. Don't know what I was expecting it to be, not that. But again, I don't know what they would have done that would have made me happy on that. But this time around, it was like they just kind of, oh yeah, and by the way, this is why we needed boronite.
Yeah, I don't know if it really mattered, right? Like, as soon as they realized that it was causing harm, they were willing to stop. Mm-hmm. So why they were doing it, I guess it matters from like an understanding their motivations kind of sense. But I think understanding that they emotionally understood that it was wrong to do so at the expense of lives was more important, I think. I don't know. I'm with you. It was definitely a very minor detail, but they did include it. And for me, that's good enough, right? Like, better that you tell us why they wanted it than not tell us at all, so that, you know, I'm fine with it.
I only say that because of the amount of attention and time that was spent on what they were mining for, and that it was so rare. To me, I think that if you make a concerted effort in a plot device like that, then give it a little bit of a payoff. I have no problem with it being used for their hyperfield, but it was just like an afterthought to say that. I would have liked just a little more, but that being said, all in all, another great season. I love that Star Trek handled things with science, math, and teamwork in this season.
I honestly think this is my favorite season of Discovery so far. Like, I feel like it's been just improving season by season. So, yeah. Cool.
Yep. So, can't wait for season 5. This season was spectacular. I liked it. I'm not ready to rank my favorite seasons, but this, between last season and now, it really feels like this is the show that we probably should have kind of had in the beginning. Like, this fits now Star Trek Discovery, instead of shooting their way through the plot and the ending. Math, science, and collaboration. It was great. So, another great season of Discovery.
A season that ended without a space battle.
Yeah. And you know what? We shouldn't. We're being reminded this is Star Trek. It's not J.J. Abrams' Trek. It's not Star Wars. They put a lot of effort into making sure that science and communications were like the prime solutions and the prime problem for the season. So yes,
yeah, I think we're both on the same page on this one.
Yeah, love it. Okay, well, thank you to our audience for listening to this review of season 4, episode 3 of Discovery. and going to be looking forward to next season. And hopefully you continue to join us for our reviews now of Star Trek Picard and all the Star Trek that's going to be henceforth coming down. So
Strange New Worlds, Prodigy, Lower Decks, it's all coming, guys.
We're back in the Renaissance era of Star Trek. All right, everyone, live long and prosper.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our Patreon and Anchor supporters. Big thanks to Stephanie Baker, S. Tam, Anne Marie, Jim Cook, and Nora Hickson. We really appreciate your support. Thanks for being a part of Beyond Trek Podcast.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your ears. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.